As you approach the center of the city, the weathered architecture gives way to more luminous Audra, piercing the ruins, eventually overtaking them entirely. Cresting the top of a fallen tower, you finally get a clear view of Aethys. He stands, legs astride, next to a great stone monument ringed with 11 cavernous alcoves. All but 3 hold a gargantuan skeleton, bones scrubbed clean by the city's storms. An immense Anguithan machine floats above the monument, suspended by invisible energy emanating from a well of light beneath it. Great brass rings spin around a core of metal and Audra at the machine's center. Periodically, Aethys's massive arms swing back. The movement alone is enough to draw great gusts of wind toward him. When they come down on the machine, the impacts are accompanied by eruptions of electricity, fire, and smoke. The hundreds of luminous Audra pillars across Ukaizo sympathetically dim in a rippling wave that spreads out from the machine. The only safe route to the god is a steep ascent along a monstrous pillar of luminous Audra. Intertwined with fragments of Ukaizo's ruins that it has carried through the centuries, the pillar bends in a long arc, towering above the machine. The pillar levels out near Aethys's head, a silent observer to the destruction of the machine it has grown beside over thousands of years. You weave your way along a treacherous, rain-slicked path up the pillar's skyward side. As you arrive at the top, you catch Aethys's attention. Fist pulled back, he pauses to observe you. With the same gentleness he showed at Ashen Maw, he lowers his arm and turns toward you.
Way. It may be hard to picture, but this city was once full of life. The Huana, yes, but also kith from many other cultures. Great hanging trees shadowed these boulevards. Gardens sprawled across the open rooftops. Each spring, a festival procession would wind its way from the hillside into this valley. The celebrants would pass through a steep walk among the stalls of foreign merchants, flowers falling upon them from all sides. All people of all nations, together in a celebration of new life. Such was the power and beauty of lost Ukaizo.
Mighty One, I once desired to return that power and beauty to the Huana. Now I wish only for the tribes to find it themselves. If not here, then elsewhere. Was I wrong? Have I failed?
Tekehu, the gods have already decided so much of your life. I would not shape what remains of it. You know how your people could benefit from your help. You have also come to see that this life is yours to live as you choose. Deciding what course to take is not easy. But if you do not choose, your life may pass you by as you stand at the crossroads.
If we don't fix this mess you're about to cause, the whole world is gonna look this bad. I mean, it's a mighty heavy load you're putting on our shoulders. I just hope we can carry it.
As long as there are people like you in this world, Adair, I truly do. This power has always been in the grasp of mortals. Now you will finally be aware of it. Now you will be able to decide what to do with it.
Gon, please, I'm begging you. What do I do following this? How am I to best serve those still living, to improve our future chances of survival?
The Deadfire and the Eastern Reach are full of animancers, women and men with brilliant minds who can solve this great problem. They will also need people with brilliant souls, like you, Shodi. People who can tend to the spiritual needs of the world in a time of fear and desperation. Remember, the flame you bear is not only light, but warmth. Provide comfort to all who need it.
What right do you have to do this? Destroy the wheel and leave us with nothing? Without even knowing what will come next?
Aloth, we are all gods and mortals, responsible for our own actions. But inaction carries its own moral responsibility. It is a burden I have carried for far too long. One must always do as their conscience dictates, even if that means abdicating a position of power. But what of you, Watcher? Why have you followed me? Have you come to bear witness to the breaking of the wheel? And you believe I should give my strength to one of them? I am certain Woodica has convinced you of this course. Why do you believe I should give this power, which we have used so irresponsibly for so long, to any of them? Though I hope my brothers and sisters would not do so, history has shown that this chaos may very well move them to war. You have convinced me, Watcher. The gods do need a strong leader. I will ensure they have one after I am gone. Indulge me in a moment's curiosity. There is something I wish to know about Eora, about Kith, that I can only learn through your eyes. You followed me all this way, dodging an armada, navigating an impenetrable wall of storms, voyaging across uncharted seas, with the machinations of gods echoing in your ears, all the while trusting in the institutions of Kith to get you this far, and earning their trust in turn. Whatever else happens this day, that much is remarkable. I believe that mortals possess the strength to collaborate and shape a future of their own design. Not all of my brothers and sisters agree. By relying on others and coming together in a time of crisis, you illustrate my point. The gods will witness you and question their assumptions about how responsible, empathetic, and sophisticated mortals can be. What inspired your decision, Watcher? Did the choice echo your foundational beliefs? Or were you influenced by observation? Woodica has been especially active since the downfall of her favorite operative. Have you ever considered that she is mentoring his replacement? My brothers and sisters never act when the gains are strict. If Wutika's shadow has fallen upon you, that can only mean she recognizes your potential to further her ambition. I thank you for your perspective. Yours is not the only opinion that concerns me, but for the moment, it offers much to consider. All I ever wanted for mortals was growth, transformation. Once, my brothers and sisters shared this. Some have forgotten themselves, giving into fatalism or tyranny. Others have succumbed to apathy. It brings me great sorrow that crisis is the only way to set the future in motion. Would that I could pass the responsibility of heralding your darkest hour to another. Never forget that trust and coordination between mortals brought you to this place. Your future... Ask. You are entitled to any answer that is mine to give. The great work of the Ingwithans falls to ruin. Reincarnation as we know it will end. Souls which currently await new life in the beyond will be born into the world as normal. But their numbers will not replenish. Anything that dies will tarry in the void of the in-between, awaiting the motion of a wheel that no longer turns. Once the beyond has emptied, every birth will be hollow-born. Unless mortals work together to carve a new path, the essence of life will be trapped in the netherworld. Gods will starve. Eora will grow silent and cold. A generation or more. That much essence is already poised to flow into Eora. But unlike an hourglass, no, should you choose, you could lay down your burden and trust in your children's children to set matters right. By your reckoning, there are still good Yes. They must work toward a solution or perish. If that task is beyond their skill, then they no longer deserve their position. I would have them justify their right to lead. That could mean swallowing their pride and hearkening to the wisdom of mortals. Some, I expect, will perform better than others. When we tamed the cycle of reincarnation, we broke what had once functioned naturally and without intervention. The essence will simply pool in the void of the in-between, never passing through Adra networks to the beyond. The dead will be left to wander in darkness, confusion, and sorrow. For several reasons, with so many vying for control of the Deadfire, I also saw a ripe opportunity for mortals to cast aside. They have never been more powerful, more capable. I apologize, Watcher. What happened to Cadnua was not personal. Given your perseverance, I know that a second home... No one is worthy of unconditional trust. If you feel the gods are beyond forgiveness, should you choose to accept the gods, I hope Wutika is entitled to her opinion. If the intent of this test is the other gods must decide for themselves if mortals are ready to dictate their future. Should Wutika's tyranny prove the only alternative, your perspective bridges eternity, Watcher. Many will look to you to mediate differences that could shake the... I must attend to my final work now. I can't... You have carried a heavy burden across the Deadfire, Watcher. Before I go, I would rid you of it. You are free now, as free as any of us can be. Many will come to you for help in the years ahead. Animancers, priests, even the gods themselves. I have great hope for you, but always remember that your future is for you to decide. Use your freedom well.
Aethys squares himself to the machine. As you move to a safe distance, he draws his fist back and resumes his assault. The blows rain down with increased fervor, but the machine perseveres in spite of his efforts. Spreading his arms wide, Aethys draws power from the luminous Audra clustered around the valley. The energy courses through his body, limbs overflowing with intense light and waves of heat. He returns to his task, each strike bringing with it the sound of cracking stone and twisting metal, the flickering of luminous Audra across Ukaizo. As the ancient machine finally begins to succumb to his strength, so too does Aethys's body, built to withstand the passage of thousands of years. The great Audra statue has finally been pushed beyond its limits. Cracks appear along the hands, then race up the arms. Aethys does not slow his assault, but continues unabated. Its brass rings twisted. The machine spins erratically but withstands the relentless barrage. Aethys stands astride it and pummels the base of the machine. Soul energy begins to flare out from the machine's heart, warping the air with the intense heat. Aethys drives his right fist into the machine's center, the core of metal and Audra. The god lets out a deafening shout, something between a cry of anguish and a roar of exultation. You see Aethys's arm shatter upward from his hand through his elbow. A flash of light and heat bursts from the core, accompanied by a cacophony of destruction. The moment passes as Aethys's shout echoes throughout the valley. Your eyes begin to recover. The god's work is accomplished. The great machine of Ukaizo has been destroyed. The wheel has been unmade. As Aethys's voice fades, the enormity of what you've accomplished sinks in. You have confronted a god. You have rediscovered the ancient city where the wheel was forged, and you have seen the wheel shattered. What comes next is uncertain, but already the legend spreads of the Watcher, who survived Andra's mortar and stood toe-to-toe with Aethys. Aethys channels his essence into Bareth, empowering the god of doors, cycles, and life and death beyond all other gods. Bareth vows to maintain peace and order in the here and the beyond, while Kith labor toward a solution. The other gods, for the time being, submit. Under Bareth's guidance, the world becomes a more predictable, stable place. Seasons fall into a disturbingly regular rhythm, and wars, famines, and natural disasters dwindle. But so too do surges of prosperity and innovation. Great minds around the world work methodically towards salvation, both unhindered and uninspired by changes, upheavals, and the unexpected. Reclaiming Ukaizo is both a symbolic and a practical victory for the Huana. The ancient city is a potent reminder of their people's ancient glory, and it promises to be a much more easily defensible capital, especially with the storm controls of Andra's Spire close at hand. The other tribes unite under the Kahanga and dedicate themselves to rebuilding Ukaizo and relearning its secrets. The Valian Trading Company continues its operations in Deadfire, though it is forced to renegotiate many of its contracts with the newly empowered Huana Crown. Company leadership finds that the new terms are much more favorable to the tribes than to their own interests. Due to these changes, the Valian Trading Company eventually withdraws most of its people from Deadfire. The Royal Deadfire Company is allowed to continue trading in the archipelago, though they are forced to submit most of their outposts and fortifications to Huana leadership. The storms across the Rawatayan mainland subside along with those of Andra's mortar. However, Rawatai regards this respite with a wary eye, ever mindful that the machinery at Andra's Spire remains under their foes' control. The battle at Andra's mortar leaves the fleet of the Principe Sen Patrena in shambles. Thus sundered, they fight among each other until they are little more than squabbling bands of pirates. They continue to harass unguarded merchant vessels, but they are fit for little more. Gone are the dreams of empire and the hunger for primacy. Despite other tensions across the archipelago, Port Maje remains a model of peaceful, productive cooperation between the Juana and the Valian Trading Company. As the balance of power changes in Deadfire, so too does Nekataka transform. Though the Kahanga monarchy moves its new seat of government to Ukaizo, Nekataka continues to be a busy and important city. The pirates continue smuggling food into the gullet, and the Raparu embrace their benefactors, aiding and concealing their smuggling operations. Over time, the gullet becomes a hotbed of piracy. Ukaizo reveals more about the ancient art of water shaping than the guild could have hoped to learn in another century of work. With this new knowledge, water shapers across the archipelago wield the currents and bend the waves for the pleasure and benefit of the new Juana nation. Your brief encounter with Letharn proves deeply influential for the children of the Dawnstars. He comes to recognize his nightmares and the scene at Hisongo as Aethys's final warning to his people. Unite in strength and faith, or perish forever. As word of Aethys's deeds at Ukaizo spreads, his fellow Dawnstars take this message to heart. As Aethys pours his essence into Bareth, so too do the children of the Dawnstars pour their faith into the god of doors and cycles, life and death. Some pray for guidance and order. Others take it upon themselves to enforce it. They sharpen their scythes and sickles to defend the peace they have been granted. They failed Aethys before. They will not fail Bareth now. With the Adra at Pokakohara destroyed and hopes of a Valian outpost dashed, the tribes resolve to leave Tikawara behind. Small and mobile, they move amongst the Kuaorakuhu Islands, where they escape the notice of larger powers. Ships continue to disappear at the southeastern fringe of the archipelago, and stories circulate of a colony of vampires and gulls preying on their crews. The Queen soon sends a contingent of her bravest warriors who end the horrors of Splintered Reef. The dead flow, an iceberg in the southern sea, continues to grow unchecked. As the ice spreads, so too do wild tales of a hideous dragon rampaging across the Deadfire. Word spreads of the primal island of Kazuwari, once home to an arena that hosted bloody competitions and fearsome ordeals. Wild tales whisper that the spilled blood attracted a terrible beast of scale and fang that slaughtered those gathered at the island before destroying the great enchanted statue that oversaw the island's trials. Absent its guiding voice, Kazuwari descends into anarchy. A vast monstrosity of tentacles and flesh erupts from the Black Isles in the eastern Deadfire, before vanishing into the depths. None know what drives the titanic beast, nor where it will appear next, or what destruction it might wreak when it rises. Though your adventures alter the destiny of Aora and the balance of power in Deadfire, they also leave a lasting mark on those who travel at your side. Your companions find themselves changed, in ways both big and small. In the days sailing back from Ukaizo, Adair finds himself disillusioned with all gods, his own above all. Where the gods have touched Deadfire, he sees only destruction, loss, and emptiness. He casts off all symbols of Aethys, and even begins refusing to use his name. Ultimately, he chooses to remain with you on the Defiant, knowing if any mortal is to have the final word in a conflict with the gods, it will be the Watcher of Cadnua. Shodi is not a priestess who understands the meaning of subtlety. As such, she makes her girlish crush on Adair painfully obvious from the moment she first sets eyes on the strapping fighter. Early in your travels, Adair appears discomforted by her persistent flirting. He often grimaces when she sidles up to him, and he takes endless pains to keep their conversations terse and to the point. But after a little smoothing on your part to nudge them in the right direction, Adair makes an effort to view Shodi with an open mind. And Shodi begins teasing the veteran fighter in a more companionable and less amorous manner. After saving each other's hides a couple times and sharing more than a few laughs, the two form an easy, and you suspect, lifelong friendship. Shodi's journey through the Deadfire on your ship is an eye-opening experience for the sheltered farm girl. After many souls harvested, more lives aided, and much adventure had, the priestess declares her intent to rejoin her fellow missionaries at the Temple of Gon in Nekataka. Following a shy grin and an overzealous handshake, Shodi leaves you with an open invitation to visit her anytime. It is some months later when she pens you a missive. Can you hardly believe it? Her chicken scratch handwriting reads. Samhain's sailing for distant lands. She's leaving me in charge of the temple. I've been named the High Priestess of Gon. If Aloth has learned one thing from your adventures, it is that the forces shaping the world are vaster and more complex than he had ever imagined. And they are far beyond anyone's power to control. Thus, it is with great relief that he abandons his labors against the Leaden Key. Without Theus at the helm, it will crumble in its own time. The best he can do is stand back and allow it to happen. Seraphon seems little impacted by your journey. Always knew the gods were larger than me, he tells you, on the evening he decides to part from your company. He's too long put aside those he cares most for. He confesses over a bottle of rum, and he's got leagues to sail to make it right. The following morning, he's gone, leaving only a crude stick figure rendering of Aethys, scrawled into the hull to mark his passage. After reporting back to her superiors for the Watcher's actions against the Valian Trading Company, Pallegina is rewarded with reassignment home to the Valian Republics. She spends the next several years as the head of the household guard for the Duke of Ancense. In this role, she is often lauded for her courage and loyalty. Even with all of the praise, there are still times when she cannot help but feel she could have had more.